Let's talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to electric car sales. I don't know if you know, but Tesla cannot sell electric cars to everybody who wants them, and definitely not moving forward because the popularity of electric cars is growing much faster than their production facility capabilities. And obviously that if we are going to increase the electric car sales, it's going to have to come from legacy manufacturers. And even when they are making the electric cars, even when they're making good electric cars, the problem is still in car dealerships. That's where the biggest obstacle lies. And today I have a perfect guest to address and talk about this issue, about something that most of us don't really know. Tom Moloughney of Inside EVs is here to talk about the training of the dealers around the country, because he's one of the few people who actually does that. He goes to the car dealerships and he trains his staff on how to sell electric cars. So obviously I have 1,000 questions. I'm sure you do too. And this is his weekly segment that we call Plugged In with Tom Moloughney. But I bet not too many of you knew that this is what he does a lot lately. So he's a perfect guest. So let's pick his brain right now.
Taking over the world, electrifying the world, E4 Electric.
Welcome to E4 Electric, your number one source of unbiased electric car news. If this is your first time here, go ahead and click on that subscribe button down there so you don't miss anything moving forward. All right, before I bring Tom in, obviously, I just want to kind of give you a quick overview of why this is happening. Now, first of all, unlike Tesla, legacy manufacturers have, pretty much by law in the United States, sell their cars through dealerships that are completely independent. Now, the way these dealerships make money is not so much on sales. As a matter of fact, I'm sure a lot of you bought gas cars at below invoice. So how do they make money? Well, they make money when you come back and the car is broken and it needs maintenance, and that's where they make majority of their money. Now, with electric cars, obviously, you can't do that because electric cars don't really need much maintenance. So this is what the problem is. Now, they can't just go Tesla's route because the reason Tesla can sell direct is because they've never had presence and dealerships, so they just kind of slide it in there. Though they're still fighting a few battles in different states. But legacy manufacturers, there's nothing they can do. So let's talk to Tom about what is the feedback from those dealers. Do they even want to sell these cars? How are they going to make profits? And what are the biggest challenges? Because even those dealers who want to sell electric cars, do they even have enough knowledge about them? Because they're essentially trained to sell cars that make profit. Are they really trained to sell cars that don't make profit? All right, before we get to that, of course, I want to give you guys a quick reminder that this video and this channel is sponsored by Byton. Check out their all-electric SUV called M-Byte coming to the US and Europe. Check out how fast it is to make a reservation, mainly because there's no payment page. That's right, it's absolutely free to make a reservation. Takes about, I don't know, you judge 30 seconds. There's a link in the description of this video so you can go there and reserve your Byton today. All right, without further ado, let me bring in Tom, and he is here to share some really awesome information. Tom, welcome to this show, my friend.
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Well, just like I said, not many of my viewers, and I think your readers really know that you actually do training. Well, why don't you just go ahead and explain?
Sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, one of the things that I do is electric vehicle dealership training. About 3 years ago, I was contacted by Plug-in America. For those that don't know who Plug-in America is, check out their website, just pluginamerica.com. They're the leading electric vehicle advocacy group in the world. And they pretty much do things like addressing any kind of problem that they see in the electric vehicle industry, lobbying for better laws and electric vehicle infrastructure. They're a great group of people. I'm a former board member. A few years ago, I was actually one of the board members for the organization. In any event, they reached out to me towards the end of 2016 because they're putting together a program to address one of the big problems with electric vehicles, and that was the dealership dilemma. The dealership dilemma is basically the fact that a lot of the manufacturers that were making electric cars at the time were kind of just making these cars and dumping them on their dealers without really giving them any ammunition to sell them. And so what was happening was the dealers really didn't understand the cars. They didn't know anything about them. They didn't understand about batteries. Customers would come in, ask them questions. They couldn't answer the questions. So what happened was they just said, you know what, we really we don't understand these cars, and we're just going to park them in the back of the lot and maybe block them in by other cars. And if we ignore them long enough, they'll go away. Now, that wasn't the case in all dealerships, obviously, and particularly those many in California did a decent job. But throughout the rest of the country, the vast majority of auto dealerships really just didn't know how to handle these cars. And like you brought up a great point about profitability. Most of the early electric vehicles over the last few years, they were compliance cars and they didn't make money. And the salespeople got very small commissions on them. So they had these vehicles that they didn't understand. They couldn't answer the questions that the customers had. They were getting smaller sales commissions. They were just a hassle. So, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going to happen. The cars aren't going to sell. The salespeople are going to steer people into other vehicles. And that happened, and it's still happening. But what's happening now is that the manufacturers are starting to transition from these compliance cars to actually trying to make electric vehicles and sell them and make money. So, and that's only going to be more and more now. So, Plug in America realized where we were in the market a few years ago and said, within the next couple of years, we know the dealerships are going to really need help. And if the OEMs won't help them, we will. And that's exactly what we did. We built a program called Plug Star, where we train dealers how to sell electric cars, how to understand the electric vehicle potential buyer, how to prepare your dealership to sell electric cars. And then we also offer them an online tool that actually gives them referrals. If people come to the Plug in America website looking for a particular car, we direct them to the dealers in their area that are Plug Star certified. So not only do we train the dealerships on how to better sell electric cars, but then we also give them referrals. So it's a pretty good deal for the dealership.
All right. So, well, I guess now that we have an agent undercover in the enemy territory here. So, I mean, tell me a general attitude that the dealers have. I mean, I know it depends. Like, for example, in California, they're more likely to want to sell electric cars. But what is the general attitude? Do they know that they don't want to sell them because of, they're not going to make much money, or they just don't sell them, or they don't want to sell them because they don't know enough? Like, what is their attitude when you kind of walk in the room? Because I know you do that in person.
Yeah, I've visited close to 200 dealerships by now, so I've got a good experience and a good finger on the pulse of how the dealers look at electric cars. And like you said earlier, there is no one exact way that they respond. When we go into a dealership, the owner or the general manager will typically assign 2 or 3 or possibly more of their client advisors to go through the training. And they, I think more than likely, will give it to somebody who they think will be receptive of it. So generally, the salespeople that we encounter that come to our training, for the vast majority of them at least, are very receptive to this. And they want to learn and they want to be able to sell electric cars. Now, that not to say that there haven't been a few exceptions where, bumped into a few curmudgeons that are just anti-EV, and everything you have to say is, they counter argue it with why EVs don't work and why they'll never be able to sell.
Tell me about it. What are their points? Like, what do they say? This is what I want to know.
Well, they're looking at their other inventory. Take, for instance, if you were a Volkswagen dealership, because this is brand neutral. We train dealers of all brands. So let's say you're a Volkswagen salesman comes in and it tells me, I sell a Volkswagen Golf for whatever, $19,000, $20,000, 22, the low 20s. It goes 350 miles per tank full. Everybody knows where to fill it up and very easy to get gas. It's everywhere. How do I sell this Volkswagen e-Golf that, goes 100 miles? Now I know the new one goes a little bit further, but the earlier versions only went about like 100 miles. How do I convince people to buy this? It costs more. It only goes 100. It goes a third as far as the other one does. nobody knows where to plug these things in or how long batteries are going to last or if they're safe, if there's going to be a fire in their
That's
garage.
a
So,
that's a reasonable. I mean, that's actually a reasonable point. That's
sure. Well,
yeah.
in general, we've found that the salespeople are reasonable, Alex. The fact of the matter is, they just want to sell cars and make money. The most of the salespeople, they don't care if they're selling a gas car, a diesel car, an electric car, a hydrogen car, a car that runs on cow dung. They don't care. They just want to sell cars to put food on the table. And the problem is electric cars gave them problems because customers would come in and ask them questions that they didn't know the answers to. They've been driving gas cars their whole life. So they have experience with a gas car. They know what to do if the check engine light comes on. They know where they get gas. They know about how long, a muffler lasts before it rots and falls off the car. They can answer these questions. But when people were coming in and asking them about how long does the battery last, how long does it take if I plug into a regular outlet? Can I plug into a regular outlet? Will it hurt the battery if I fast charge? What's the difference between the Tesla plug and a Nissan Leaf plug or a BMW plug? Why are there 3 different plugs? They're giving them all these questions that they just can't answer. So it's much easier to say, you know what? You don't want that electric car. This gasser over here is much better for you. It costs less. You know where to fill it up. Don't worry about those electric cars.
Yeah,
So
I don't blame them. I mean, it does sound reasonable. So okay, so so when you actually get in and people are relatively receptive to being educated, and by people I mean dealers, though they are people too, I guess. So what are the
Yes,
top
they're people.
3, top 5 issues that you try to fix? What are the things that they say that they need to be the most educated in order to be able to sell these cars? And what are the things that you believe they don't even know they need to be educated in? How does that work?
They don't know very much. So I would be here all day if I wanted to go and start telling them what they don't know. But I can't expect them to know much. I didn't know anything about electric cars before I had one. So, it's a different animal and there's a lot of different knowledge. But honestly, the number one by far that they need help with and that they ask us for help with is understanding incentives. And it's not just the federal tax credit, which in itself, most car salesmen don't understand the fact how it phases out, where their manufacturer is along the line, like how many vehicles they've sold already, how much longer they're going to be able to go before the credit's going to phase out. Does everybody qualify for the credit? The many of the salespeople that we've encountered just assume everyone qualifies for it. That's not the case. You have to make and pay that much in federal taxes in order for you to be able to get the credit in the first place. So, that the federal tax credit and incentives in general is the number one thing that we get asked for help for and that we spend a lot of time on.
Wow.
And understand it's not just the federal tax credit. There's a lot of state and local incentives. There's incentives on getting charging stations installed in your house. So when we go to a dealership, when we go to an area, we'll either do in-dealership training or we'll hold regional training sessions where we'll invite 30 or 40 different dealerships in an area, rent some big room somewhere, and host like a dealer training and have 20 to 30 salespeople there in the same room. So what we do is when we go into an area, we'll look up all of the incentives in that area. We'll know going in if there's state incentives, if there's charging station incentives, and we'll give them that, twice over so they really thoroughly understand it. And then we provide them with a book, kind of looks like this. And when we leave, all the people in the training get this manual that has everything in it, so the client advisors can go back and they're not going to absorb and remember everything. If they're sitting at the table and somebody asks them about tax incentives, they can quick flip through the binder and they'll know everything right there. We also give them a link to our PlugStar site, which has all of the incentives really easily there for them to review. But it depends. Some of the client advisors, particularly the older ones, they like to have, pad and paper in front of them to look it up. Some of the younger client advisors prefer to go online, so they'll put a link to our site on their computer If somebody has a question that they can't remember from the training, they can go right to the Plugstar site and get the answer.
All right. So, and I know the training is probably 1 or 2 days, from what I understand. Do you follow up and see if it actually worked? Do they sell more electric cars, or this is still a bigger problem than just training?
Yeah, we have done some follow-up surveys, and as part of the Plugstar certification, what we do is we certify dealers to be a Plugstar dealer. They have to agree to do things like host electric vehicle ride and drives. They have to have at least 2 of their salespeople on staff certified. If one of those people leaves, we have to go back out and recertify them. They have to have 2 salespeople at all times that are Plugstar certified that went through our course. And they also have to share their electric vehicle sales data with us. They don't have to give us their customer names, but we ask for monthly reports on how many electric vehicles they've sold before and after the training. And our training has shown that our data has shown that we've increased sales. I don't have the latest numbers that we had in, but the last time that I got this information was somewhere between 8 and 10%. So the dealerships that we trained have done somewhere between 8 and 10% better than they did before our training. And that's real money.
Yeah, yeah. And this is just with electric cars or overall sales?
No, they're electric car sales. We don't ask for the entire sales of the dealership. We're only interested in their plug-in electric vehicle sales.
All right, so now let's go back a little bit, because I know some people, I recently even learned it from you. Why is it that legacy manufacturers can't just go the same route that Tesla did and just forget about dealership, create their own showrooms and sell direct, and also explain why Tesla was able to do it in most of the states?
So understand this, every manufacturer would love to sell direct. And I'm not just guessing this. I've had conversations with representatives from many of the existing OEMs and talking about Tesla's sales model and the fact that they have the dealership networks. I'm not saying they would love to just eliminate the dealers because they do like their dealer network. They get to, in many cases, just make cars and just give them to them and say, here, you deal with this, you sell them. A company like BMW, for instance, every manufacturer has different rules. They just literally just have to give the dealers the cars, and they're counted as like sold cars for BMW, even if the cars aren't sold. It's just the dealer's problem. Dealer has to sell them. So the manufacturers don't want to get rid of the dealers, but they'd like to have it both ways. They'd love to be able to sell direct. They'd love to be able to break electric vehicles out of their regular their brand and then just sell them direct like Tesla, but they can't, and that's because of the dealer franchise laws. And these go way back, for when auto dealerships were really just starting to proliferate in the U.S. And the general thought or concern was back then it wasn't like today where we have these mega dealership groups where one dealership, Penske or whatever, owns like 300 dealerships. It was, Alex's Chevy dealership, and you and your wife owned a Chevy dealership on the corner of Main Street. And the concern was that if you're really good at what you're doing, you're selling a ton of Chevys. That Chevy, the Chevrolet, the manufacturer might say, hey, you know what? This guy, Alex, he's selling a hell of a lot of our cars. He's making a lot of money. Maybe we should open up a dealership, mile or two away and just sell them direct, and we'll make more money than selling him the cars. We can cut out the middleman. And so that there was concern that the manufacturers were going to do that. So we created these dealer franchise laws that basically banned manufacturers from selling direct to customers. Manufacturer cannot sell a direct car to a customer, cannot lease. They can't even really interact directly with customers. Everything has to go through the dealerships. And see, the fact that now Tesla came out and said, we want to sell our cars direct, it would appear to be against these franchise laws, because the laws say that manufacturers can't sell directly to customers, which is why in a lot of states, state by state, they're challenging Tesla. They're telling Tesla they can't sell their cars in the state. A couple states were successful and banned Tesla from selling cars. But Tesla's argument, and it's a good argument, is look, go back to why you created these laws decades ago. It was to protect the existing dealer franchises. The little guy, remember Alex's Chevy dealership? We didn't want Chevy to come and hurt Alex. He paid for a dealership franchise. He has this little business, and we don't want the dealers to crush, the manufacturer crush him. But we're Tesla. We don't have dealers. There's no Alex's Tesla. So we're not going to harm anybody. So let us sell our cars direct. This is our model. So they've got a very strong point in my opinion, why they should be allowed to sell. But the problem is we've got these dealership, these auto retailer lobby groups now that are very strong, and they are fighting on behalf of the dealers because the dealers don't want to become extinct. So we've got the dealership associations, state by state. They've got a lot of money. They've got a lot of political influence, and they are fighting to keep Tesla out of their state by state, because they don't want to see their business model go away.
And I don't blame them. I mean, obviously, on one hand, I want the direct sales for Tesla and everybody else who's coming in. On the other hand, I kind of understand it's almost kind of unfair, but I'll let them sort that out. Let's go back to the conversation about, dealerships are not making much money on electric cars right now. They won't be as far as maintenance is concerned. So how do you think this is going to work out? I mean, sooner or later, just even regulations, right, will force dealerships and legacy manufacturers sell electric cars. How is this going to work with their dealerships? How do you think they're going to be able to make money? I'll just jump in and answer my own question first. My idea has always been, forget about, fixing engines, transmission fluids, and all that stuff. Sell subscriptions, sell digital services, the streaming audio services, the video services. There's so many other, things. They put an app store in there and go Apple route. And that way you'll make money and still be a profitable dealership. What say you?
I think you're right with that. That with electric cars, the business model is going to change a little bit, and they will be able to sell things like subscription services. How about selling home charging equipment, connectors, extension cords, things like that? There's things that electric car owners need, accessories. I've got my Model 3 now, and I've already bought like 8 different accessories for it, and most of them were not bought from Tesla. So the manufacturers could get into selling the accessories more than service. But there's one thing I want to talk about with regards to service, and I hear a lot of things on the internet, different forums and groups where people talk about the fact that one of the reasons why why dealerships don't want to sell electric cars is because it ruins their model. They make a lot of money on service, so that's why they're not trying to sell the electric cars. And I can tell you that it's true that they're going to make less money on service, but that is not a reason why that's not part of the reason why dealerships are so bad at selling electric cars today. And I'll tell you why. The salesperson, the guy who sits down and sells the car, he couldn't care less about service. He makes no money off service. He's just there to sell a car and make commission. He doesn't care if that car doesn't have a single problem for 10 years or if it's in the shop every other week making the owner money. That's the owner that cares about that. And he's not down on the sales floor trying to sell cars. So that argument that's part of the reason why really isn't true. And I've visited enough dealerships to understand that has no bearing on this case. Now, it might be part of a reason why a dealership principal, the guy who owns the dealership, why he doesn't keep a lot of electric cars in inventory. He's not interested in selling them. That could be the case. But as far as being on the front line selling the cars, it makes no difference to a salesman if that car needs service or not.
So what you're saying, it's really, if dealerships will train their people or people like you train their people to sell electric cars, get them excited, get them knowledgeable, that actually can change regardless of how much money they can make afterwards on maintenance. I mean, that's kind of first time I'm hearing that, but it sounds like you're right, because that's a different two different problems there.
Absolutely. And what I want to make a point is it's not just about training the salespeople. That's probably the biggest component to it, but the dealership itself has to be ready. And what I'll typically do before I do a dealership training is I'll go do a secret shopper. The day before I'm going to go train a dealership, I'll go to the dealership and I'll go in and talk to a few people, ask questions about electric cars, like I'm interested in buying one. And
That's
see,
a YouTube channel waiting to happen, Tom. We got to do this together. We got to do the undercover boss slash secret shopper together and see how it goes.
you know, I understand how that would be, maybe make for good drama, but I wouldn't set up a dealer like that. I'm there to help them. I'm not there to embarrass them.
I'm just kidding.
So,
I will do it my own. Don't worry.
So anyway, I'll
Go ahead.
Yeah, go right ahead. I'll watch the video.
Okay.
But I won't participate.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll go in, I'll poke around and get some questions, ask some questions, get some answers, see just how bad they are. And then when I go back, I'll talk to the manager after I do the training about what they should be doing there besides having better prepared salespeople. Things like having an EV on the sales floor. A lot of these dealerships, all the EVs are in the back of the lot. They're not plugged in. They're not charged. They need to have a EV on the sales floor with the hood up so people look and see it's different, with a charger plugged into the car, a connector. It doesn't have to be charging, but just the fact that there's a connector plugged into the car with a wire going away, people walk up to it and look at it, it gets them interested. So that's number one. You have to have the cars fully charged, ready for test drives. The one EV you have in your inventory can't be in the back of the lot, like I said before, with like 10% state of charge. So when a customer comes in, wants to take it for a test drive, you say, oh, well, it's not charged. Can you wait a half an hour? We need to charge it. You're setting the tone that these cars aren't ready for prime time. If the car is not charged and ready to go for a test drive, then it's a hassle. It's not, you wouldn't want to own this car because you can't just get in it and go. So the cars have to be charged. They have to be in prominent positioning on the lot so that people see them. And another thing that we recommend that I think is really important is the dealership should have an electric car in their loaner fleet, so that when people come in with their gas car for an oil change or minor maintenance, something that they're not going to need the loaner car for 2 or 3 days where they're going to have to charge it a few times. Many of the services are just like an oil change or something where they know they're only going to have the car for a couple hours and the person's going to come back later that day. Give them the electric car. Let them drive it. More often than that, when people drive an electric car, they like the electric car and it gets them interested. Now, they might not come back to the dealership and buy it that day, but you know what? It got them thinking. And maybe a few months down the road when their lease is up, or the wife needs a car, or the husband needs a car, or their son needs a car, they might come back and say, hey, I really like that electric car when you gave it to me as a loaner. I want to talk to you about that. So those are the things we recommend. In addition to the training, we try to really set the dealership up for success.
I have to say, this is probably one of the best ideas I have heard, because I remember when Tesla was, they still do this when you have a, let's say a regular battery Tesla, and you come into a dealership, or excuse me, you come into the service center and you get a loaner car. They always try to give you a better loaner car. As a matter of fact, they're trying to sell you that loaner car because you'll be like, whoa, this is even better. So I agree with you, because all of us who driven even once an electric car know that the best way to sell an electric car is just to put somebody in it and let them drive it for 10 minutes. They're really that much better. Recently here, I live in Sacramento, and what they did, the local electric car association, they would let people come in to like a big event, have them drive the electric cars, but the way they got into the electric cars, they offer them free tickets to the state fair. Mind you, this is Sacramento. State fair is a big event. Mm-hmm. So they gave them the tickets, and a lot of people showed up, and obviously it was able to experience electric car. So I love this idea, and I really hope the dealerships that you're dealing with are actually implementing that. What will be interesting, and I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe I can contact one of your dealerships that you've trained here in Sacramento, and maybe do like a follow-up report and do the whole show on this, because this is some major stuff. I really love this. So all right,
we have an ongoing contract in Sacramento right now. I'm not doing the active training in Sacramento because I do more of the East Coast training. I have done some Southern California training down in Carlsbad, San Diego area. But right now, we currently have programs going on in in San Diego, in LA, and in Sacramento.
Awesome.
And Eric Cahill, the program manager, is actually doing the dealership training in the Sacramento area. I could definitely put you guys in touch.
Awesome, awesome. Let's talk about it off camera, but for now, tell everybody where they can find you as far as reading your stuff, as far as following you on social media, so they can get more of this type of exclusive information that they really can get anywhere else.
Okay, so I'm a staff writer on Inside EVs. I hope most of your followers know who Inside EVs are. And I'm on Twitter. I'm at Tom Moloughney. You could follow me there and see what I'm up to. I usually post mostly about electric cars, and sometimes I even get in a little trouble, but I think that makes for a fun Twitter account.
That alone is just worth it, especially your little back and forth with Toyota. I love that. So follow Tom on there. You see right under his name, it's his Twitter handle, and of course I'll put the link to all of his articles on Inside EVs. And I cannot imagine you guys not knowing what Inside EVs are. So great, man. I really appreciate it. This is the inside that nobody really knows. So thank you so much for sharing this information. And I will see you next time. I can't wait what the topic is going to be, but we usually don't decide until a few days before, but I'm sure it's going to be something fun.
Thanks, Alex. And if any of your followers have any questions about the dealership training that I'm doing, post them in the comments, and I'll keep an eye on that and try to answer them the best I can.
All right. Thanks so much, man. I will see you next time. All right, guys, this is awesome. I actually wanted to do this for a while. I think we had this idea more over a month ago, but you know, we had so many different news coming up, and so we had to talk about it. A little bit slower week this time around, so I was so happy that we're able to talk about this, because I'm telling you, there's just no other place where you can get this information. You know, Tom's been doing this for a while, and we talk about it off camera all the time. So I'm just so happy. So he was able to share this. I'm sure we'll do a follow up on this. I'm going to talk to him off camera about actually maybe doing a report from one of those one of those dealerships. Let us know in the comment section if you have a dealer in your area that might benefit from this program, or if there are other things that you think that they should be able to do, or maybe didn't do last time when you were shopping for an electric car, that maybe you know, Tom can add to their already pretty full and comprehensive system. So I absolutely love it. A quick reminder for those of you guys who have yet to sign up with our VIP list. We send an exclusive story every Saturday for free to your inbox. Definitely make sure to sign up at e4electric.com /VIP. And thank you to one of my newer Patreons, Victor Fong. Thank you so much for joining my Patreon community. That's where you can watch all of these videos live and contribute to this independent channel. You know, this is what I do for a living now. So thank you so much for supporting and putting really food on my table, literally. Thank you to Victor and everybody else who've been supporting me. That's pretty much it. Looking forward to your comments, both of us, Tom and I. Other than that, I will see you next time, and remember to stay charged.